So this is a really quick lesson that's aimed at helping you understand how on earth to do unseen poetry, because people really struggle with this one and they kind of panic and they don't really know how to prepare, and they just kind of sit in terror at the idea of trying to write an exam answer on a poem that they've never seen before. So I'm using the AQA GCSE English Literature paper. This applies to all unseen poetry questions for all exams, not even just GCSE. If you're doing A-level or you're at university or you're doing IB or some other kind of exam, it's all still really applicable. But especially if you're doing AQA, this is going to help you very precisely. So all I'm going to do is I've not actually seen this paper. I don't know what the poem is. It's completely new, and I'm just going to respond how I would respond in the moment to this unseen poem, so you can kind of see how you're supposed to respond to it and what kinds of things they would expect you to say. So I'm not going to write anything or plan anything. I'm just going to go through the paper, read it, and then tell you what I would do with it. If you want really in-depth help on unseen poetry, go to scribbly.com. We have an unseen poetry and prose course that has tons of practice questions, example answers, loads of videos like this where I go through, a whole plan, a whole essay that I write for it. So this one's just a kind of like little starter just to get you used to the idea of unseen poetry. And then if you need loads of help, go take the unseen poetry course on our website, which is www.scribbly.com. Good, so we'll jump into it. I have literally no idea what this poem's going to be. Let's scroll down. I'm hoping that I know what it is. So it's section B here, you can see. This is if you're doing AQA. You want to always know the format of your specific exam. So whatever exam you have, make sure that you've read loads of practice papers and you're really familiar with the timings and the format and everything. So section B, unseen poetry. In this case, we have two questions. So the first one is just a straightforward essay question responding to the poem. The second one is a comparative question. Again, just to keep this lesson super short, I'm not going to go for that comparison question or talk about that in this lesson. I will do other lessons, probably a follow-up on YouTube, and then also some on the scribbly.com website where I go through how to do unseen comparative. But for now, we're just looking at how do you do an essay on a single unseen poem. So, this is the poem. I'm not even going to look at the poem first. I'm going to look at the question, because then I know what I'm looking for in the poem. It's by Amy Lowell, who actually, even though I've never read this poem, I do like Amy Lowell. She's a good poet. So, we have in a London thoroughfare 2 a.m. How does the poet present the speaker's feelings about the city at night? First thing I'm going to do is try and figure out the focus of this question. So the city at night is what the subject of the poem is. So we're starting really simply, what is it about? And the focus of the question is the speaker's feelings about the city at night. So I don't want to only look at what is going on in the city. I also want to look at how does the speaker feel about what's going on in the city. The speaker's feelings is the important thing about this question. So all of my different points that I plan for my different paragraphs in the essay are going to be about those feelings. So I might try and find maybe 3 or 4 feelings that she feels, and then they would form my paragraphs. So let's have a look then. Hopefully this poem is not in copyright. If it is, I'm sorry. I think it shouldn't be, hopefully. They've watered the street. It shines in the glare of lamps, cold white lamps, and lies like a slow-moving river barred with silver and black. Cabs go down it, one and then the other. Between them I hear the shuffling of feet. Tramps doze on the window ledges. Night walkers pass along the sidewalks. The city is squalid and sinister, with the silver-barred street in the midst, slow-moving, a river leading nowhere. Opposite my window, the moon cuts clear and round through the plum-coloured night. She cannot light the city, it is too bright. It has white lamps and glitters coldly. I stand in the window and watch the moon. She's thin and lusterless, but I love her. I know the moon, and this is an alien city. Good. So we can start with kind of openings and endings. Where do we start? We start probably with the title. The title is A London Thoroughfare, 2 a.m. That little star means they're going to tell you what that word means. So if we go down, thoroughfare just means street. So it's a London street at 2 a.m. So we know that she's describing the city of London at night. We know that the specific time is 2 a.m. So we're very used to images, I think, and descriptions of London in writing. And you've probably read something that describes London before. It's more unusual to describe it at night or a specific time of the night. So we might want to think about, where do we open the poem? They've watered the streets. We don't know who they are, so this is a pronoun that relates to nothing in particular. Maybe the people who take care of the city, or the street waterers. It shines in the glare of lamps, cold white lamps, and lies like a slow-moving river. So we have imagery connected to water and light here. I read the poem aloud because it's easier to understand a poem when you read it aloud. I know in an exam you can't do that. So while you're practicing unseen poetry questions, do read them aloud. Obviously in the real thing, unfortunately, you can't read it aloud, but try and imagine it in your head being read aloud, because you notice different words and images from what you would if you just read it on the page. So yeah, we've got this kind of dark image of a city at night, but lots of lights kind of reflecting off the streets. That's like a river, and there's cabs going up and down, and feet shuffling. There's tramps that sleep on window ledges and night walkers on the sidewalks. Personally, I'm kind of interested in this word sidewalks because it's not an English word. So if you want to go really precise into the poem, you can do. I would say that suggests perhaps that the speaker is American and she doesn't actually know London comfortably. That might be reflected in the final line. This is an alien city. It's foreign to her. It doesn't feel normal. It might just be that it's an alien city because she's used to seeing London in the day, but it might also be because she's not from that city. So point one then would be that the speaker feels like an outsider, or the speaker feels like the city at night is unfamiliar to her. That's kind of one point we could take from it. So if we go back in the poem, you have this idea of menace, maybe frightening, like atmosphere or mood. The city is squalid and sinister. Squalid means really dirty, sinister means frightening or kind of intimidating in some way. There's maybe this sense of you could maybe say squalid, sinister, night walkers, and then the image of the tramps, specifically calling them tramps, which is kind of like quite a derogatory term. All of that creates an atmosphere of fear or uncertainty. So point one might be she feels like an outsider. Point two might be she feels uncertain, or she creates a kind of uncertain or dangerous mood and atmosphere with the description. The relationship between the light of the moon and the light of the city is also kind of interesting to me, because, two of the stanzas really are about the moon. The moon cuts clear and round through the plum-coloured night. She can't light the city, it's too bright. It has white lamps and glitters coldly. So the moon is personified, I think, as quite a friendly or welcoming being, but her light, her energy is not strong enough to block out the electric light of the city. So point 3 might be that the speaker prefers nature to city life, because she seems to feel connected to the moon. I stand in the window and watch the moon. She's thin and lusterless, but I love her. I know the moon, and this is an alien city. So she feels like the moon is familiar, the city is unfamiliar. The moon is clear and round. It's thin and lusterless, meaning thin as in it's probably a sliver of a moon. Lusterless, meaning it doesn't have much light or shine to it. So she contrasts the imagery of the city with the natural beauty of the moon, preferring the moon, but sort of having a symbolic feeling like the light of the moon doesn't shine in the city. It's too strongly preoccupied with its own light, its own energy. So there's repeating imagery of these white lamps, glare of lamps, cold white lamps that frame the poem. They create a cyclical structure at the beginning and the end. So I'd maybe mention that, the idea of this light. So yeah, we've come up with 3. This is kind of how I'm just basically talking at you with my inner dialogue. So anything that popped into my head there while I was going through the poem, I just literally said it to you right now, so you can kind of see my thought process. I've not gone too precisely yet into the form, structure, language points, or the techniques or anything. I'm trying to engage with the themes and the messages and the feelings of the speaker. So yeah, point 1 would be that she feels like an outsider. Point 2 would be that what did I say for point 2? There's a sort of dangerous and frightening atmosphere created in the city. And then point 3 might be that she contrasts the beauty of natural forms like the moon with the kind of ugliness or kind of starkness of man-made forms like the lights of the city versus the lights of the moon, and light is maybe used in a more symbolic way. So yeah, that's my 3 points that I would write, and then I would come up with a thesis, and then you can write the whole essay. So the main thing that you're trying to do with unseen poems is just get to a point where you're like, I have 3 ideas on the question. Sometimes 4 is good as well. So 3 to 4 ideas on the question. Each idea becomes a paragraph that gets unified into a thesis. So your thesis is your whole intro. It's kind of like the main argument that you want to create about the question. And then, yeah, you might look at, really short lines like this. You might look at the irregularity of line length, the irregularity of stanza length. Then you can go to town on your techniques. You can pick up on punctuation. Think about what is the punctuation doing. Compound adjectives there, plum-colored, slow-moving. You can think about short sentences, but I love her. Why is that a short sentence? So don't do the really tiny little details first. Do that after you've got the big picture idea of your poem. And you can keep going. Like I could think more deeply and longer about this poem, but I've got enough to write a really good solid essay. So I just stop at the point where I have 3 points. And if I was planning this, I would also plan my thesis, which is like my main argument on the question, which would summarize exactly how the speaker feels about the city and why she feels that way. So yeah, there you go. That's basically how you would plan an unseen poetry question. That's what to do when you suddenly go in the exam. And hopefully that's not too scary for you. If you're thinking, I really can't do that right now, that's fine. It takes practice. It's not something that you can do the first time you've seen a poem. So what you need to do is read loads of poetry and get used to poetry and develop your own favorite poets as well that you love reading. And then get used to all of the techniques of poetry and how poetry works. Once you've done that and had a lot of exposure to it, it becomes so much easier. So if you feel like you can't do it right now, it's probably because you need more exposure to poetry. And then read loads of example answers as well. So yeah, if you go to the Unseen Poetry and Prose course on scribbly.com, we'll help you with that. I think on the Scribbly blog as well for free, there's a lot of recommended reading lists, and I put poetry recommendations on there as well, or sometimes I upload poems that I think are really good. So feel free to use the Scribbly blog to read some poems and get familiar with it. hopefully feeling less scared and more clear about what you have to do for this exam. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you guys soon in a future lesson. Bye for now.